Hi, my name is Josh Wilcox, and this is my video for Management 330. Alright, so the app I developed is called Crash Course, A Beginner's Guide to Ableton, and it's designed to be just a new user's manual for this software. Ableton Live is a DAW, or Digital Audio Workstation program, and it provides users with a whole bunch of music composition and sound engineering capabilities. The only problem is the user interface can be a little bit tricky, and there's a bit of a steep learning curve when it comes to just getting familiar with everything. I remember when I very first started using Ableton, I always wished that there was something that could kind of condense all the necessary information into a manageable package without having to watch 2-hour-long tutorials. So that's kind of what I've tried to do with this app. The first page here just describes what the app does, and here's our different sections. Let's go to Overview of Ableton. This just talks about the two different views that the user interface has, Session View and Arrangement View, and kind of what each view is ideal for. Audio versus MIDI tracks talks about the two different types of tracks that you're provided with and kind of what each one is used for. Audio tracks are going to be used for like your loops or when you're sampling, and MIDI tracks basically initially have no sound. You have to map out the notes here onto these parameters. This is called a piano roll, and then once you've done that, you add an instrument onto that MIDI track, and it will provide sound. Now, Ableton provides users with a bunch of stock instruments that you can choose from. You can also purchase and download your own through VST plugins. Similar to the instruments, Ableton provides you with a bunch of stock audio effects. And here I've just kind of tried to cover the more basic or more commonly used audio effects, ones that you probably want to get familiar with early on when learning Ableton. So first, here's the auto filter. I talk about what it is, what it does, examples of automation on an auto filter, the 4 different types: low pass, high pass, band pass, and notch. And here I've provided some audio examples of kind of what the audio effect does. So here's just an example of a drum loop, a dry track of a drum loop. Now here's that same track with an auto filter, specifically a low pass filter, added onto it. So you can kind of hear those high frequencies fade in and then fade out. So these are just designed to kind of give users an idea of what the effect does. Next is the compressor. Again, explaining what it is, what it does. When new users are looking at these things, it can be kind of intimidating. There's a lot of knobs and buttons here, so I try to cover just the basic configurations that you need to worry about. In the case of the compressor, it's the threshold. And I also talk about some techniques you can use using the effects. One common one with the compressor is called sidechain compression, and that's when you compress a track based on cues from another track. So, for example, here I have just a synth pad and a kick with no compression on it. Now here's that same track with the synth pad being compressed using cues from the kick drum. So you can kind of hear how the synth is ducking out every time the kick hits. So again, these are just to provide users with, an example of what the effect is doing. Let's jump down to delay here. Again, talking about what it is, the main configurations to worry about, an example. The different settings that you can use. So delay is one of my favorite effects, and it can be set up in one of 2 ways. There's the sync mode, which is shown here, and then there's the time mode. So if you click this button here, it'll switch from sync to time, and then you can set the delay time in milliseconds. But what if you don't know the amount of milliseconds that you want to set the delay time as? Well, you can come down here to the BPM delay time calculator, And as long as you know your beats per minute and the note value of delay that you want, let's say 16th notes, click here, 125 milliseconds. Let me show you the input handling here. Caps lock's on. BPM must be entered as a number. So those are the audio effects. And last but not least, here we have a basic theory page. Now this is just designed to be kind of a quick reference sheet for people who want to know, what notes are in the key that I'm working on. So I've set it up here as 2 drop-down boxes. Now initially I had this all as one drop-down box, C major, C minor, D flat major, D flat minor, but as I was looking at it I realized it just looked kind of clunky, and I think that it's better in 2. It kind of gives you major, minor here, and all the note values here, and I feel like that looks much better. Notes in the scale, the relative key, and the parallel key.